Thank y'all very much for that very, very warm reception. It is indeed great to be here in the great state of Ohio. Before I even get started, I want to congratulate and thank a few select folks. I can't thank everybody I need to thank tonight, but I want to start with your chairman. Kevin DeWine has done a phenomenal job. It has been said several times tonight, but when you look at what he accomplished with a great team working with him, when you look at winning those 5 statewide offices, you look at increasing the size of the Republicans in the House majority in the congressional delegation, when you look at taking that House back, I think he deserves a great round of applause for winning every one of those races this past election cycle. I told him now he's got to do it again next year to make sure that we make sure this president is a one-term president in Washington, D.C. But, you know, you here in Ohio, you've got a great chairman of your party. You've also got a great conservative governor. You know, John Kasich's done a phenomenal job balancing the budget, making important health care reforms, getting Ohio back on track to create more good-paying jobs so your children don't have to leave home. My only regret is we can't clone him. They need him in Washington, D.C. right now. Last time he was the budget chairman was the last time they truly had a balanced budget. We need to send him back to Washington, D.C. to help them straighten out this mess. John Kasich's doing a great job as your governor right here in Ohio as well. I had the privilege of serving in the Bush administration with then OMB director and later Ambassador Rob Portman. It was great to see him in the Senate. And finally, I had the privilege of serving in the House with John Boehner, and I'm so excited to have Nancy Pelosi no longer serving as Speaker of the House, and instead John Boehner holding that gavel. I want to thank Ohio for sending so many distinguished men and women to service, not only here in the state, but also in the country. Before I start, I want to share with you, I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you today, and even before I start my remarks, I have a letter here for me with me today. I found out about this letter. It was written by a little boy named Billy from Shreveport, Louisiana. Shreveport's the northwestern corner of my state. It's in the center of the Haynesville Shale Find. It's a very, very important part of my state. Turns out little Billy very badly wanted $100. He prayed for 2 weeks, but nothing happened. Every night he prayed to God for his $100. He finally decided to write God a letter explaining why he wanted the $100. Well, when the post office got this letter addressed to God USA, apparently they decided to send it to the White House, to President Obama. The president was so impressed, he was so touched, so amused by this letter, he told his secretary to send little Billy $5. He thought this would be a lot of money to a little boy like Billy. Billy was delighted with the $5. He sat down to write a thank you note to God. I happened to get a copy of the thank you note. This is what he wrote. He said, "Dear God, thank you very much for sending me the money. However, I noticed that for some reason you had to send it through Washington, D.C. He said, as usual, those crooks, they deducted $95. They've asked me to speak to you for about 20 minutes. If you only remember one thing about my talk, if you remember that little letter from Billy, you've remembered the most important thing I'm going to say tonight. I want to start I'm not going to speak to you very long about Louisiana. I want to share with you just a couple of thoughts about the great state of Louisiana. You know, we have been through quite a lot these last few years. We've had 4 hurricanes, we've had an oil spill, we've had flooding in our state. You know, in the Old Testament, they described the 10 plagues. We're hoping to avoid the locusts and the frogs in Louisiana. But I want to tell you this. Ohio's been through its share of challenges as well. One of the states hardest hit by this national recession. But I'm here to tell you, the people of Ohio, the people of Louisiana, we are strong people. We're not just going to endure and survive. We're going to prosper despite these challenges. And I want to share with you what is happening in the state of Louisiana. You know, when you heard that a governor from Louisiana was going to come address you today, you may have had some second thoughts about that. We've had some famous governors in the state of Louisiana. I was honored to serve in the Congress with Ralph, and I remember we served with a congressman named Billy Tozan, chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Billy had a great Cajun accent. I can't do his accent, but I'll share with you one of his favorite stories he used to say about Louisiana. He'd say, any given moment in time in Louisiana, he'd say, half my people are underwater, the other half are under indictment any given moment in time in the state of Louisiana. You know, you'd always hear the jokes about corruption in Louisiana. The problem is the jokes weren't funny anymore. Our LSU, our university, did a study. They said they surveyed business leaders, and tied for first place for what we could do to attract more jobs and investment was to crack down on corruption. People said, look, as long as who you know is more important than what you know, we don't want to invest in your state. And that's why we've enacted some of the toughest laws, the toughest ethics laws in the entire country. The Center for Public Integrity used to rank us 44th worst in the country. Today we rank number 1, not number 44 in the entire country. Better Government Association used to rank us in the bottom 5. Today we rank in the top 5. It was our very first special session. Indeed, there's an old story. Governor Mike Foster, one of our very first Republican governors, was touring one of the state's famous prisons. And the warden was so excited the sitting governor had come to see the prison, and after it was done, he said, Governor, it's been such an honor to have you come and visit our prison here. You know, he said, you're the first governor that's ever come without handcuffs on. We're thrilled that you've come to see how we're doing. I tell my people, Louisiana's got plenty of comedians, musicians, and entertainers. We'll let them, rather than our politicians, entertain the rest of the country from now on. But it wasn't just ethics. In addition to ethics, we also have cut taxes, we've cut spending. Indeed, we enacted, as you've heard, the largest income tax cut in our state's history. We got rid of the taxes on debt, new equipment, utilities. I've made a commitment, as long as I'm governor, we're not raising taxes in the state of Louisiana. You know, we figured out something that Washington is yet to figure out, and it's simply this. When government creates a job, it costs every taxpayer money. When Americans create jobs, it gives every taxpayer money. Seems like a pretty obvious notion, but they haven't figured it out in Washington by cutting spending. We have cut spending 26%, by $10 billion since I've been governor. We've cut the number of government positions by 10,000, fewer state employees than we've had in over 20 years. And as a result, our unemployment rate has been below the national and the southern average every single month since I've been governor. Indeed, Southern Business Development has named us for 3 years in a row the best state in the South for economic development. Site Selection says we're number 1 in the entire country for per capita economic development. Indeed, Paulina and many others have ranked us the most improved state in the entire country. And what we have shown, by cutting taxes, by cutting spending, we can grow our economy and begin to bring our children home, begin to create more opportunities for our families. The third thing we've done, we have continued to work to make Louisiana a safer place in which to raise our children and our families. And what do I mean by that? We've cracked down on those monsters who would prey on our children. We've adopted stronger sentencing laws, even a castration bill. You know, people used to brag. They used to be so happy that you could go online and search block by block to see where these monsters live in their neighborhoods. I've told people, I'm not going to be happy until you go online and find out they all live in Angola, Louisiana's largest state prison, not in our neighborhoods, not threatening our children. And I tell you that not only as a governor, but as a father and as a husband and a father of 3 beautiful young children. Another way to put it is, look, if you were Congressman Anthony Weiner, you might want to stay out of the state of Louisiana. We've got some pretty tough laws in our state. Now, I could spend all night up here bragging about Louisiana, but fortunately for you, I won't do that. I've already been warned that I shouldn't even talk about SEC or college football, so I'm going to stay away from those topics. I do, however, want to thank you. Before I leave the topic of Louisiana, I do want to thank the great and generous people of Ohio. My state has been through our share of natural disasters, but you know what's great? And you probably won't see this on national TV, and you won't read about this. You hear about the horror stories. You never hear about the school groups and the churches and the civic organizations from Ohio and the other states that have come to Louisiana time and time again after Katrina, after Rita, after Gustav, after Ike, after the oil spill, to see what they could do, to provide shelter, to provide food, to provide school supplies, to do whatever they could do to help their neighbors, to help these strangers get back on their feet. America is truly an amazing country. It's a place where citizens will spend their own money to come to another part of the country to help total strangers. And a lot of people from Ohio came down to help, just plain individuals and families acting on their own. And please, always know we will be eternally grateful to the generous people of Ohio. So thank you on behalf of a grateful state. Now I want to get to what I really wanted to share with you tonight. And here's my thesis for my remarks tonight. Time is running short for America. America is the proverbial frog in the pot of water that is gradually coming to a boil. Yet the Democrats in Washington mistakenly think we're sitting in a hot tub. It is clear that the Democrats in Washington are worried about trying to re-elect President Obama. It's also very clear, however, they are not worried about trying to resurrect the American economy. Now let's be clear about something. As Republicans, we must focus our energies on doing what is best for America. We must focus our energies on pursuing policies that will strengthen our country. Therefore, we must focus our energies on replacing President Obama. We must do this because time is running short. But before I talk about that, let me also be very clear about how we should conduct ourselves. Passions run high in politics. People get all worked up. I've noticed there are some people who seem to really dislike President Obama. Some who even say that they hate him. By the way, I think that is an ignorant way to think about the President of the United States. Hating President Obama is foolish. But defeating President Obama is absolutely critical to the future of our country. You may recall many of the leftists in this country spent 8 years hating President Bush. They would go to incredible lengths to put their ignorance on display for all to see with shrill, absurd, and nasty rhetoric. We must not mimic their shallow approach. I have no doubt that President Obama loves this country. I have no doubt that he spends every day trying to make things better, and I have no doubt that President Obama wants the best for this country. I also have no doubt that what President Obama thinks is best for this country is in reality a complete disaster for our country. I have no doubt the President is wrong, his policies are wrong for America, and I have no doubt that President Obama is leading us down a terrible path that will result in calamity for our nation. I don't question where President Obama is from, I question where President Obama is going. America is indeed approaching a tipping point. Time is of the essence, the hour is late. When the President ran for office 3 years ago, there was great confusion regarding who he was and what he believed. Much of this confusion was intentional on his part. He ran one of the best campaigns our country has ever seen. You all saw it firsthand right here in Ohio. His campaign was designed to make liberals think he was a liberal, moderates think he was a moderate, and even some conservatives found some reason for hope. Or as Governor Palin cleverly refers to it, that hopey-changey thing. Today, however, any doubts about who President Obama is and where he wants to take America are completely erased. He is easily the most liberal president America has ever endured. And so we find ourselves at a tipping point. All of the battles raging in Washington, battles over budgets, earmarks, spending caps, entitlement reforms, bailouts, debt ceilings, and the like, they're all skirmishes in a much larger struggle over what America is and where America is going. This upcoming presidential race next year really boils down to one simple question. Is America going to reclaim our greatness and tackle the future with policies that boldly embrace, enable, and grow our free market economy? Or are we going to continue to retreat along the road to big government European socialism? Because when you cut through the clutter, this is what the next election is all about. Let me restate that. Are we going to reclaim our greatness and tackle the future with policies that boldly embrace, enable, and grow our free market economy? Or are we going to continue to retreat along the road to big government European socialism? A senator put it very well. Marco Rubio said it this way the other day. He said, we should not be implementing the policies of countries that people come here to get away from. That's pretty well said. Never have we seen such a clear divergence of views on where our country should go. By his actions in office, President Obama has made his intentions plain. He may briefly veer back towards the center during this upcoming campaign, but there can be no doubt about where he is seeking to take America. This president has grown the federal government in an unprecedented manner. This president does not understand that jobs are not created by the federal government in Washington. Government needs to create an environment where it is easier to create jobs and then get out of the way. That's all. New jobs created by the government weaken our economy. New jobs created by Americans in the private sector strengthen our economy. Let's remind ourselves what this president has done. He has already taken over our health care system against the clear wishes of the American people. He has made us more dependent on foreign oil. He passed a stimulus bill that was enormously expensive but didn't create jobs. He has grown the national debt from $9 trillion to $14 trillion, but don't worry, he has a plan. He wants to take it to $26 trillion over the next decade. He has taken us to the point where our debt is almost as large as our entire economy, and he has brought the greatest country in the history of the world to the point of flirting with bankruptcy. You couldn't make all of this up. And in spite of all this failure, he is now asking us to give him another 4 years. Really? To do exactly what? Maybe a government take over the banking industry or about the housing industry? To add another $14 trillion of debt? Maybe to create another government entitlement program? One can only guess what a second Obama term would bring. My little girl brought home from school